Hi, I'm Zach Stumbo, and I'm the State Homeless Coordinator at KDE.
Good morning. I'm Marjorie Conley. I'll be assisting Zach and we'll be covering our homeless data, homeless children and youth data collection and updates.
Thank you. The topics that we will discuss today include the audience and resources, the definition and identification of homelessness, student summary report, student records transfer, the Q&A homeless report, data and free lunch validation, and reporting timelines.
Zach, I think you need to take control.
Thank you. Can you see that now on the screen? I apologize.
Yes,
Thank you.
I can see it.
Moving on to the audience portion. The audience for this are district homeless liaisons or coordinators and persons responsible for homeless data collection and reporting at the school and district level. And inside this presentation, there are resources that you can look through. We have the data standard, our KDE websites, which are the main website, and the data collection website. We also have a link to the National Center for Homeless Education. They are being ran by a new organization, so some of their numbers may have changed. You'll want to go to that website for the most recent information. And we have the pupil attendance manual and a QA homeless quick reference card. The definition and identification of homeless students begins with understanding the definition. And I always tell people the most important thing is to consider where the student sleeps at night, the nighttime residence. It has to lack fixed, regular, or adequacy. Those can be definitions from the dictionary, the fixed, regular, and adequate. And it needs to be where they're spending the most nights. It could be sharing housing due to loss of housing or economic hardship, could be living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, not all trailer parks though. It could be living in emergency or transitional shelters. They could be abandoned in hospitals. Children and youth who have a primary residence that's in a public place and not designated as a regular sleeping place also meet that. They might be living in cars, public spaces. We've seen students living in rent-to-own sheds. That's a newer thing. Also migratory children, and then children who are living in substandard conditions, which we'll talk a little bit more about. When you go to homeless data entry, the first thing that you'll do is navigate to the window, and we have pictures now that match the current updates on IC. You'll want to select the primary nighttime residence from the drop-down list. And then you'll select yes or no for unaccompanied youth. An unaccompanied homeless youth is someone that qualified for McKinney-Vento homeless eligibility, and they're physically separate from their parent. They don't have to be emancipated. They don't have to have any kind of court order. It's just a designation with whether or not they're physically with their parents. The enter date needs to be added in there, Sorry, I'll get to more about that on the next slide. And the end date will auto-populate to 6/30 of the reporting year, and that should not be altered. That stays the same. Digging more into the primary nighttime residence, you need to select one of the four options, S, D, U, or HM, shelters and transitional housing, doubled up, unsheltered, hotels and motels. Unsheltered contains both those that are in an inadequate place or substandard housing. And while the student's primary nighttime residence may change throughout the year, the selection should remain the same as the student's status at the time of identification for the reporting year. In other words, if they start out as unsheltered, but they eventually find a family they can double up with, we would leave it as unsheltered because that was their first designation of homelessness. That keeps it consistent so we don't have to make sure that changes are put in. We only change it at the beginning of each year. Let's talk more about inadequate and substandard housing. Most recently, we've been over 8%, and the national average is about 4%. So I want to talk about who qualifies for that. The primary nighttime residence designated as unsheltered could be used for these students. Basically, we want to think about what is the condition of their nighttime residence. Is it lacking a utility like water, electricity, or heat? Is it infested with vermin, mold, or some type of insect? Are they lacking a basic functional part like a kitchen or a bathroom? Or is there some unreasonable danger to adult children or persons with disabilities inside the house? And that must be inside the house. We can't use contextual factors in the neighborhood for that. It has to be something inside the nighttime residence. Additionally, you could look at local codes for inadequate housing if you wanted a more localized version. You're allowed to do that according to the regulation. Unaccompanied homeless youth, we talked about at the beginning, two conditions have to be present for that. The child must be in an arrangement that qualifies for McKinney-Vento. And then beyond that, they must not be in physical custody of a parent or guardian. Something that I often get questions about are age-related for unaccompanied homeless youth. That could be a young child or it could be an older child in Kentucky up to 21 or the day that they graduate. If you have specific questions, I would invite you to call me and reach out and we could discuss whether or not that student is unaccompanied, especially those. We say that all cases are case by case, but especially unaccompanied, we want to make sure that we're not overusing that or neglecting to use it appropriately. Homeless students subsequently identified as foster care. Previously, if a student was waiting for foster care, they were identified as homeless. That is no longer the case. If an identified homeless student becomes a foster student during the year, the foster care record will be created online in Infinite Campus, and that comes directly from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. This will result in an Infinite Campus record where the homeless student is also identified as a foster student for that same school year because the homeless services remain as a stopgap for the rest of that school year. The dual identification is accurate. However, placement in foster care does not determine homelessness. And I don't get too many calls about that anymore, but I want to make sure that people understand that even awaiting foster care, that is no longer something that we code. If you have more questions about that, we spell it out in the data standard for homeless children and youth in section D. Oh, I'm going to go back to that for 1 second because I had something I wanted to mention. One thing that we get a lot of questions with are questions about grandparents and extended family who have children. I often encourage people to call me and reach out so that we can think through that. Not all grandparents, not all families matter. We have a flow chart to look at and talk through. So if you have a scenario where you're wondering, does the student qualify? Please reach out. I'm more than happy to look through the facts of that particular case on that. Kentucky Homeless Services are an optional part in there. That section allows schools to document student services provided due to being identified as homeless. You could document the enrollment, their academics, the enrichment services. That data will get transferred with the student as a reference to the receiving district. And the collection is not KDE mandated, but it is recommended. I always like to say thank you for all the work on Infinite Campus. So many states don't have a universal system to report, and we really make it, I think, as seamless as possible for the records to transfer. A lot of hard work has gone into that. Homeless Youth and Children Addendum to Services is another optional use. It's under the PATH Student Information, General, and Forms. Custom Form Homeless Youth and Children Addendum to Services is a form designed to accompany services to students, and that data will be transferred as well. Again, this is something that we recommend, but it is not mandated for homeless students. If a student is identified as homeless, the student's homeless record, including that primary nighttime residence and unaccompanied homeless youth status, should remain in the student's record for the remainder of the academic year, regardless of when his or her status change. That includes placement in facilities or group homes. Why? Because once they're identified, they're eligible for those services for a calendar year. This is probably another good time to remind people um, sometimes students become homeless over the summer, and then what happens at that point? The students could be welcome to any services over the summer if they're eligible, but they need to meet that eligibility definition the first day of the following school year to continue receiving services past the summer. Homeless data transfers as a summary record through the student records process. The data will be in a PDF file, which means that the receiving district will need to create a new homeless record in their district database for the student. And the data elements on the PDF should be entered into the receiving district's database as shown on the transfer document. The start date should be updated to reflect the date in which the student enrolled in the receiving district, and the end date will auto-populate to 6:30, as we stated before. A student summary report. The student summary report is available by going to student information, and then program participation, and then homeless. That report generates a list of homeless records for a specific student. Homeless state published ad hoc filters. These state published ad hoc filters are available to assist with the identification of homeless students transferring from another district or who were homeless in a previous year and may need to be evaluated for homelessness in a current year. Appropriate staff must be granted access to these reports by the district. Again, we do not assign that access here at the state. I'd recently had a question about that. The QA homeless report, the detail version, the purpose of this report, the purpose of this detail report is to provide a list of homeless students to be used for state and federal reporting purposes. The detailed report also provides the user with highlighted elements that indicate data quality issues. That report should be generated on a regular basis throughout the school year to identify homeless students enrolled in the district and to identify data quality issues that need to be addressed. Appropriate user access must also be granted to the staff who need to generate that report. And you can click the quick reference card if you need more information about this at a later date. Did I go back one, Marjorie? I'm sorry. Or is this the correct slide?
It's the correct slide.
Sorry, thank you. The QA homeless report aggregate version, the aggregate report will generate in a PDF format, and it contains unduplicated counts of students identified as homeless anytime during the reported year. The report also calculates a percentage of homeless students by gender and race ethnicity by grade, living status, and unaccompanied youth status. Please share the aggregate QA report with the district and school leadership for both awareness and quality assurance. The QA Homeless School Report Card version, this is a report that you would use in assisting with the verification of the district and the school's homeless student group. The report will generate counts of homeless students who have a primary enrollment in schools, including in the school report card reporting. The table provides a count of homeless students by race, gender, and other groups as we discussed. Data validation. We want to make sure to validate homeless records to ensure the accuracy for the school report card and for other federal and state reporting. The district homeless liaison or coordinator should ensure that the correct students are reported, including withdrawn students. If homeless indicators were imported from a prior year enrollment, the homeless liaison should review the homeless status in the current year and update the program participation indicators as needed. We recommend regular basis, quarterly at minimum to make sure, and you can always reach out if you have any questions about that. Free lunch validation. Filter the QA detailed report on the free reduced lunch column to ensure that all homeless students are receiving free meals. The report highlights the field as an error if the status is marked reduced or paid. Please collaborate with the food service coordinators to ensure the student FRAM record in Infinite Campus is updated and the student is receiving free lunch for the remainder of the academic school year. This is one of the very first things we want to make sure that we do. It's a hallmark of the McKinney-Vento Act is that all students automatically receive free lunch, and that's for the calendar year. Please make sure to validate homeless records to ensure that all homeless students are enrolled in a free lunch. I would also make sure that they know that when you're signing them up and registering them at the beginning of the year. Make sure the student knows that that is a benefit they'll be receiving. And you'll need to work with your school food service director to resolve any issues or reach out to us. The reporting timeline and data uses. Homeless data should be complete and accurate by June 30th each year because KDE extracts homeless data on July 1st from the district data warehouse. And our contact information. I am Zach Stumbo. I'm the homeless coordinator. Marjorie is here for specific questions about Infinite Campus. My version looks a little different when I look into it. And Marjorie, I'm sorry I took your slides away.
It's okay.
I didn't notice the stopping part, but we got through it. Wendy, are there any questions?
There are no questions in the chat. So if you have anything to add or anything you want to elaborate on.
I guess all I would say is that I welcome people to call or to set an appointment to talk to me for technical assistance, especially if I haven't had a chance to speak with you since I've been here in the role. I've now almost 3 years. Most of these questions we can handle very quickly. People have, and sometimes people think they're using my time or I'm too busy, but I'm always here if someone has a question related to homeless education.
Yes, Zach is very responsive and knows the program very well. I would add that I could add a little bit on the school report card side of things. The aggregate report or the school report card report is a report type within the QA homeless that will allow districts to see that data as it will be displayed publicly in the school report card. So it's very important during the August, September timeframe for your homeless coordinator to be able to work with the school report card contact to kind of look in that secure site to make sure everything looks correct. Homeless is used as an accountability indicator. So it's very important that that data is up to date and the students, of course, are receiving the services that they're entitled to, including, but not limited to, free lunch. So it is important. We get the question a lot, especially this time of year. People will start running the reports to look at data and they maybe haven't looked at it throughout the year. So if a student has, is in the district, was homeless, and they have an error on the QA homeless that they are on reduced or paid lunch, there's really no going back to fix that if the student's no longer in the building or being served by your district. But it is important to run that on a regular basis so that you can catch that those kids that are in your district and are homeless are receiving the services they are entitled to, including free lunch. So that's why that's kind of added to that report. It's very important information.
I want to add something about the unaccompanied homeless youth.
Yes.
I forget, some people know and some don't. I was an unaccompanied homeless youth in 11th and 12th grade. And the reason why that's such an important designation to make is that if it impacts the types of federal aid that they're eligible for and the amounts of federal aid they're eligible for once they transition after high school. If they're unaccompanied homeless youth, the law says that they need to be offered one-on-one FAFSA counseling, and they need to be given a letter that verifies their unaccompanied homeless youth status that they're to hold on to in case the university or school wants some verification. I'm available for one-on-one talks about that. We have a pre-recorded webinar about that if you'd like more information that I can send out. And then I'd just also like to say that we have really increased the amount of students that we're identifying, which I think is a good thing. I think it means that we're ensuring that everybody is identifying eligible students. And a lagging indicator for that is our homeless students are graduating at a higher rate than at least in the last 5 years. I've gone back and checked the last 5 years. We were almost at 88% last year, which is definitely an improvement from the low point in the 5 years.
Yeah, and I would encourage homeless coordinators to visit the KDE website for homeless youth. There are a lot of resources that Zach has compiled and are available on the website, including some of the flow charts that he recommended or said within his slides. A lot of that stuff is also linked from the homeless data standards. So yeah, that KDE website is got a lot of really good resources for the homeless coordinators. And even like we said, the determining the eligibility flow charts, which we also have linked in the homeless data standards. I still don't see any questions. I would also, since we're filling time, encourage districts, homeless coordinators to be familiar with your student records transfer person. If a student comes, as Zach said, from another district and they were homeless within this academic year, they still need to receive homeless services in your district when you receive them, regardless if their living status changed. If it's in the same academic year, they're considered homeless the entire school year. And that homeless summary is a PDF that you'll get in your student records transfer for the student. So that data does have to be re-entered into your database. It comes through as a PDF and not actual data. And the living status should remain, like we just said, the living status at identification is the authoritative living status. So if the student has moved from doubled up when they were identified in one district as doubled up, and then they move to another district and it's shelter, that living status needs to be entered as doubled up, because we report that federally, and the federal guidelines are the living status as of identification.